please rise? Dear God, today as the session opens, we pray that your presence will be before us and everyone who serves in the decision-making process of our city. We pray for direction which will lead our city to be strong and unified. May we continue the legacy of our founders. May we be granted this day the wisdom to make decisions which will be for the good of our city. We also pray for your special blessings on all those who are working to transform our city and make it a better place to live and work. Amen. We'll now do the pledge. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America,
to the republic
which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Counsel Milanazzo.
Here.
Counsel Noon.
Here.
Mayor Samaras.
Here.
Counsel Cirillo.
Here.
Counsel Conway.
Here.
Counsel Elliott. Counsel Kennedy.
Here.
Counsel Leahy.
Here.
Counsel Mercier.
Here.
8 present.
Thank you. Anyone with a moment of silence? Councilor Mercier?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to offer a moment of silence in darkened chamber to a woman who was unassuming, very kind, and my neighbor and my mother's neighbor before me. Norma Beeland is her name, and anybody would be so happy to have her as a neighbor. Norma was married to her husband Arthur for 30 years before his passing in 1986. She graduated from Lowell High School with the class of 1953. During the 50s, she worked as a proofreader at Courier Citizens while caring for her 3 daughters. Norma was blessed by 3 devoted daughters, Deborah Deschamps, Carol Stewart, and Patricia O'Brien, who cared for her around the clock for months as she got very ill. Everyone should be lucky enough to have children of that caliber. Norma had a passion for gardening, which she shared her expertise with me and most of the neighbors, while offering many tips on what to do and how to do it right. Blessed with many creative talents, she had a deep passion for drawing, painting, and watercolor, and was a member of the Whistler Art Society of Lowell in her younger days. Norma pursued Bible studies, she loved animals and everything in nature, and we all loved her. Besides her 3 daughters, she leaves behind 4 grandchildren, Jeffrey, Scott, Sarah, and Nolan, and 2 great-grandsons, Jordan and Angel. Our sympathies to her family, relatives, and her many friends. She will be truly missed. And I'd also like to offer a moment of silence in darkened chamber to all those who have passed away since our last city council meeting. They will be truly missed. May they rest in peace. Thank you.
Thank you. Please darken the chambers. Thank you. First, on the mayor's business, we have Mr. Jack Flynn to speak on behalf of the Kathy Whitaker Forum. Mr. Flynn.
Hi, my name is Jack Flynn. I live at 58 Prescott Street here in Lowell. And I just wanted to bring you up to date a little bit as far as what the Kathy Whitaker Forum is doing. And many of you, I think, knew Kathy. Some of you actually came to Acre Family Child Care and spoke at her annual meeting or presented citations to some of the providers there at Acre. And as you probably know, Acre is an organization in town that provides child care for quite a few kids in Lowell. There's probably 250 kids that gets transported every day to different providers, and there's 60 women there who have their own businesses in Lowell, a child care business. And so it does a great job in terms of allowing parents to go out and work while their kids are being provided for. At the forum, what we're trying to do is a couple different things. One of the things is provide scholarships for students who are trying to pursue early childhood education. So we do 2 scholarships at Middlesex Community College, and we award those every year. And they're kids that probably need the money as far as to stay in Middlesex Community College, but they're pursuing a career in early childhood ed. And just last month, like we've done in the last 3 years, we also provide scholarships, 2 scholarships at the high school for kids who want to pursue that as a career as well. So that's sort of the focus as far as on an individual basis. And on a community level, we try to do one thing primarily, and that's to try to have an event every year in Lowell that sort of focuses on what Kathy's dream was early childhood education for all the kids in Lowell. And so for the first year, we had a breakfast, and we had a speaker from the Home for Little Wanderers in Boston who spoke in terms of advocacy in terms of early childhood ed. And last year, given Nikki Songas' seat was up for election, we brought all the candidates in and had them speak and had a debate with them in terms of what were the issues around early childhood ed that they could bring to Washington and advocate for. So just to let you know, this year, for any of you who are grandparents or your parents or teachers or advocates for kids, we're having a film called No Small Matter over at Middlesex Community College at the Academic Arts Center. And it's going to be Thursday night, and it's free and open to the public. And what it deals with is kids from 0 to 5 years old and what happens with their brain, how their brain develops during that period of time. And then it'll also talk about teachers and what they're dealing with as early child care providers, as well as the whole issue. So we invite all of you. We hope you can come. And again, we thank all of you for your support that you've given us in the past as far as the forum, and we look forward to continuing to work with you. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Also, as a board member of the Cambodian Mutual Association, I'd like to announce that on June 8th, the association will be hosting its annual fashion show fundraiser. Local community leaders will try on assortments of Cambodian and American fashion styles in a fun evening designed to raise funds for a good cause. The event will be on Saturday, June 8th at 6 p.m. at Lindsay's Function Hall. I hear the Vice Mayor, I don't know, I'm a board member, and I was not asked to be in the fashion show, but the Vice Mayor was asked to be in the fashion show, so I think we should all go just to attend to see what's the fashion's going to be. Any comments at this point?
You have to go and see.
All right, thank you. I have an important announcement. I'm pleased to announce that the matter of the Holt et al. Versus the City of Lowell, known as the voting right case, the parties have reached a settlement. Tomorrow, an agreement will be filed with the court outlining the settlement terms. At this time, there'll be no further comments from either side. Okay, so by tomorrow morning, the judge in charge of the mediation will be filing for us for both sides, and information will be forthcoming as to the settlement. So I think people want to know that. So thank you. Next, I need a motion to accept and place on file.
So moved.
Councilor Cirillo, second by Councilor Conway. Next, we have the city clerk minutes of the Technology Utilities Subcommittee of May 21st, City Council meeting of May 21st for acceptance. I need a motion to accept and place on file.
So-
Councilor Mercia, second by Councilor Noon. Thank you. It's not 7 o'clock yet, so we'll go down to communications from the city manager. First is motion responses. A, no left turn on Gorham Street. Councilor Cirillo.
Hi, yes, thank you. Natasha and I have been speaking, and we've cleared up my motion, which could have been worded a little bit better for her understanding. So maybe Natasha wants to speak to it. Thank you so much for this.
Yeah, I'd misunderstood Councilor Cirillo's motion. What she really was asking is that there was a no left turn sign allowed out of the gas station onto Elm Street as opposed to on Elm and Gorham. So that was brought to our attention by a resident who was on the spot. Appreciate that. So we did a little research. There was a zoning board decision in 2006 for that business that right turns only would be permitted onto Elm Street out of that entrance, and that they would have pavement markings and signage. So Development Services has sent a letter to that business notifying them that they need to install that within 7 days, and they will follow up and make sure that gets done. Sorry about misunderstanding.
No, I read it, and I was like, oh yeah, it's a little confusing. So thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? Thank you. Next, motion B, motion response, plastic bags, paper bag request. Councilor Cirillo.
Hi, yes, this is a great response, and thank you. I'm all set.
Any further discussion? You're off. Councilor Leahy.
Is Mr. Slagle here?
Yes, he is.
So with the report, is this is something you're gonna send out to every large store then, I guess?
Yeah, the assessor's office has prepared a list of all of the stores based on square footage that would be required to comply with the ordinance that was passed by city council. And we have that list, so we're gonna do a mail merge and mail that letter out to each and every store that's on that list.
And what's that gonna do for us, anything?
Well, the goal was, the motion from city council was to request that that the city council would like to make a request to those stores to use paper bags with handles, and so that's.
Right, but they don't have to, so, I mean, this just seems like it's kind of, with
It's
all
not-
due respect, it's like, what's it do? It doesn't do anything.
But it's
why
not in
would
the
we-
ordinance, we can't make them, the city council passed an ordinance that
Yeah, I
doesn't
know,
have
but
that
it
as
just
a
seems like we
requirement.
have better things to be doing than to have your office send out letters asking people to run their business the way we want to. Then we're gonna file all this, and then we're not gonna do anything with it.
Well, I also would note that one of the things that we are also doing with this letter is we're collecting the information in the bottom portion of the letter for them to return to City Hall. So we have contact information, and we also know that the products that they are using to meet the requirements of the ordinance. We're working with Gunther Wellenstein. He's very familiar with that, with the products that are available, and he will be able to review those, or the recycling department will be able to review those and make sure that the products that they put on there that they're using are compliant with the ordinance.
Yes,
That's
sounds
kind of the dual purpose of the letter.
Okay, I mean, just with all due respect, I just think you have better things to be doing in your office than to be doing these, so I just wanted that on the record. Thank you.
Madam Manager.
Yeah,
then
just
Councilor
quickly, Counsel, you're correct, it's not part of the ordinance, and the motion was to request them. So it's using, it is passing on the request, but also trying to solicit some information, so it's not a wasted, and I don't know what the response will be, but we
Sure.
will get some information from it as well.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Conway.
Yeah, just very quickly, just a quick question to you. How many of those stores are actually 3,000 square feet or more? I don't think we've ever really received a number. on
Yeah, so I believe the list is 500. I believe there's 500 stores.
Hundred?
I was very surprised at the size of that list. I believe that's what it is.
Can you make that list available?
Absolutely, I can. It's an Excel spreadsheet, so I can certainly send it to all the city councilors as well.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Thank you. Next, motion response, Spring Street paving request. Councilor Mercia.
Sufficient response, thank you.
Okay, next we have the project labor agreement. Madam Manager.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. 2 weeks ago, 2 motions were referred to my office for report and recommendation, and we gave a preliminary recommendation 2 weeks ago and report. As stated in the report in the packet, I have met with the consultants that we have hired on this project from Skanska, as well as from Perkins Eastman. We met with Dale Caldwell, who is here this evening, Mary Ann Williams, Jim Dowd from Skanska, who is here this evening, Joseph Drown and Robin Greenberg from Perkins Eastman, and Peter Bradley of PM ANSI, and Joseph Drown is here as well. In essence, Mr. Mayor, after reviewing with all of our consultants, again, meeting with them, also meeting with union representatives and our consultants, as had also been suggested at the meeting. The report in the packet, it has again, summary of what the recommendations are. And just quickly, the project scope and budget agreement that we had submitted and was approved by the MSBA at their board meeting in April, and by this council, did not account for PLA in the project scope and budget. According to the consultants, a PLA would add 10 to 15% onto the construction costs. With the construction costs are $270.5 million of the $343 million project, and this would equal $27 to $40.5 million to be added. That would have to be funded by the city residents. The MSBA will not participate in a PLA. We further added information regarding delays. The cost for delay is in addition to, not instead of, the PLA, and our consultants can explain as well. But in short, delay would cost 3.5% on the escalation on 2.770.5 million. A 6-month delay would add another 4.7 million to the cost. A 3.5% for a 12-month delay would equal about 9.4 million added onto the cost. The potential issues at this point of trying to, if the city were to agree to the APLA, would be a couple of ramifications. One, it would have to be funded, or it would have to be taken out of the scope. So to the potential additional cost, the 10 to 15%, again, based on the experts, and these were from Skanska, Perkins Eastman, and of course the MSBA also had looked at these numbers as well when we submitted the numbers earlier this year. So if the city chose to amend by changing the loan order, which we have already voted on and approved, we would still have to go back to the MSBA because it changes the project scope and budget, and that would have to be dealt with at the MSBA level. That would again be adding to the city's cost by, we'd have to fund it by 40.5 million to cover potential costs. Or we would have to go back to schematic design to remove from the scope the added cost, which would also have the potential effect of affecting the MSBA grant, because if we were to go back and have to redesign to take out of the project up to $40 million of the project, for instance, the Freshman Academy, I think, was in the $30+ million range. It could mean removing the whole Freshman Academy from the project. Now, that could affect the MSBA's contribution because their contribution is based on the project that we submitted. That included a Freshman Academy. So we would likely have a problem if we tried to redesign and take that amount out of the project, that it would not only increase the city's share, but likely have a decrease on the MSBA share because you'd be taking out something that was factored in to how they came up with the 210 to 215 million that they are contributing to the project. The other concern would be the cost to redesign, architect costs, our consultants' costs, and going back to schematic design. We're unsure if the MSBA would let us go back into schematic design where they have already approved this, but that's just another consideration. The other consideration and concern is likely project delay for litigation by non-union subcontractors and non-union trade associations. We included letters that were sent to the city and to the council from the Associated Builders and Contractors of Massachusetts and Merit Construction Alliance. Those letters the council should have. Both of those organizations indicating, speaking to litigation. This is not any litigation on the issue of a PLA would go to the Massachusetts Superior Court. It would not be dealt with, excuse me, in the Attorney General's office that typically is tasked with bid protests for quick resolution. They do not have jurisdiction. It would be a court case. As we stated previously, there's no known school projects since the MSBA has been formed that has had a PLA on this, and that goes back to 2004. So since 2004, there's no MSBA school project that has had a PLA. Looking at potential litigation, it's impossible to estimate exactly, but a minimum of 12 months. This is based on the experience of Superior Court litigation and the type of case that would be waged. That would be delay. It would also, and Dale from Skanska can address this, he spoke with the MSBA, litigation or threatened litigation would halt the funding on this project. And so we are at a point where we have sent the project scope and budget back to the MSBA. They are finalizing, they will send that back, but if there's potential litigation, they may halt the project entirely for the duration of how long that would take. The estimate that we have for cost of delay, as I said, is about $9.4 million for a 12-month delay.
Council? You all said, Madam Manager?
Well, no, but
Go ahead, finish.
if there is a lawsuit, we of course have the cost, not just to the project, stopping the project even before it starts, but also experts and other costs that are associated with litigation, as well as our own overhead. If there was a delay for litigation, then there's a chance that we could lose our construction manager, who we are about to hopefully engage to go on this project, because not likely that they would wait 12 months or more while a case went through court and they couldn't have their people working. So those are just some of the potential ramifications. The other motion that we were asked to look at was the cost of to conduct a feasibility study and to come back with a recommendation on that. So the cost of a feasibility study on what impact a PLA would have, again, our experts are estimating a minimum of $100,000, but could be much more. Delay. The only way you would know what the cost would be is by putting it out for bid or for proposal, so that could take a month or two in and of itself. And then the other issue is we have no funding for the study. It could not come out of the budget for the Lowell High School. Every dollar has already been planned and accounted for. And so, and lastly on that, we also have our experts who we've hired and paid, who have given us their opinions on this, not just when this was first discussed, but when they've estimated and cost estimated this. And they have given us conclusively, they reconciled those, that they conclusively gave us the opinion that a PLA would add to the costs of this project. The other part of the report that we looked at, and that is that the contracts in a competitive bidding process can provide for many of the issues that are important to this council, to the city. For instance, local labor language preference. You don't need a PLA to include that language in the contracts. Diversity goals, which is something that has been important to the city and something that we have been working on in our area, as well as this contract would be, we could provide for diversity goals for a diverse workforce on this project. Likewise, when it comes to apprenticeship, that has been discussed as well. Both union and non-union companies who would work on this, we can require apprenticeship programs with specificity. The other area that we also looked at with our consultants were some of the issues raised having to do with safety and quality of contractors and subcontractors on the job, and all contractors and subcontractors, whether there would be union or not, must be pre-qualified, including filed and non-filed sub trades and bids. Every firm who is able to bid on this must be certified by DCAM, and the Construction Reform Act of 2004 has laid out a detailed process for conducting this. And as I said, would have to be DCAM certified in terms of the contractors. We had an extensive discussion today with union representatives about working together in this process in terms of with union companies or none, or if there are complaints about a non-union company or concern, bringing that to our consultants in Skanska and working together. So in conclusion, and I'll turn it over to our consultants, but this is a summary of all of the information that I've been provided. So based on the foregoing, the potential cost addition to a PLA, the process that the city would have to go through in order to change the project scope and budget now with the MSBA, the delay of that process, as well as the potential delay for litigation and all of that, we would recommend not doing the PLA. And likewise on the feasibility study, the cost and not having the funding for it to do the feasibility study, where we already have the opinion of our paid consultants who've been working on this project now for 4 years. That's the report and recommendation. I know if people can have questions for the experts or.
All right, Councilor Mercier, we also have 5 speakers. Do you want to speak first?
Yes, please. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Madam Manager. Thank you, Madam Manager, for your response to the PLA issue. Please let me respond to what you gave us. First, you gave us a PLA study by Skanska, who referred to the Beacon Hill Institute at Suffolk University and their executive director, David, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right, Turk, saying how the projects with the PLA will cost more and no savings will be had. Construction costs will rise by 15%, but where is your proof? You can say whatever you want, but I don't see any proof unless you're here this evening to pass it out to us to see what you have. But what we failed to see anywhere in the article was the fact that the Suffolk University and its executive director, David Turk, severed ties with the Beacon Hill Institute in 2015. You see, Beacon Hill Institute raises money through private funds with right-wing think tanks such as the Koch brothers, and the BHI does not support unions, so you see how biased their report would be, and it was. We could have received and been given in our packets testimony by the Massachusetts Special Commission on Project Labor Agreements by Francis X. Callahan, who is an expert on what PLAs are all about. But why jeopardize our non-union beliefs with the truth? We could have also been given testimony from one of your constituents in government, Madam Mayor, Mayor Richard Howard, Mayor of Malden, who wrote to Mr. David Sargent, who was president of Suffolk University, regarding the Beacon Hill Institute that you so highly quoted, who states, and I quote, reluctantly, the Malden mayor writes, reluctantly, I am writing about what I believe are serious and erroneous misconceptions contained in a recent policy study issued by the Beacon Hill Institute. The effect of project labor agreements in Massachusetts, along with the ABC, Associated Building and Contractors, prompted me to write, which of course you brought their papers into this to support non-union and no PLAs. Based upon, and he continues to write, based upon what we know and now knew, or what we knew and now know, I have found little evidence that the PLA inherently added any significant cost to our project. I believe that on our building program, there were benefits in the form of meeting scheduled deadlines and overall quality of workmanship. Secondly, we received a memo from the city manager that stated the submittal to the MSBA, Mass School Building Authority, will not account for a PLA, and that MSBA will not participate in a PLA, and that the MSBA grant funding would likely be reduced, resulting in further redesign costs. These statements are fundamentally incorrect. MSBA has unofficially said it is not against or for a PLA on any of its projects, and I officially received a response to my question about PLA from Matt Donovan. Are you aware of who he is? He's the Director of Admission and Operations for the MSBA on May 14th, and I have it on my phone if you'd like me to later on play it for you, who said, "A PLA is completely up to the district. It is a local choice. And yes, it's up to the city council on whether or not it wants a PLA on this particular project. And please note, it will not have to come back to MSBA for rebid or redesign." Thirdly, you may be wondering why the PLA came into this council chamber on such a late interval, but in fact, the unions had to wait to see where the location of the school project would take place. Talk about a delay. That was a delay, because their PLA had to meet the test. The project must be of substantial size, duration, timing, and complexity, and these 4 factors must be considered. In certain cases, the sheer size of a project warrants the adoption of a PLA. However, sometimes the building of a single school will not in and of itself justify a PLA. The Lowell High School project meets all 4 requirements for a PLA. That is why I am fighting so hard for this, because it is just. It is the right thing to do to keep local money here in our city of Lowell, hiring Lowell tax-paying residents first, hiring graduates from the VOC as building trade apprentices, from UTEC who are trying to get their lives back together, and concerns that many hire diversity on the job, and this will do it. We can do it all with a PLA. It is our decision, the city council's decision. Everyone on the Lowell High School project has a contract. You people have a contract. Perkin Eastman have a contract, who is the architect. The OPM, Skanska, the consultant, they have a contract, but not the workers? How fair is that? What information I received in my packet was biased in favor of non-unions, and I, for one, do not agree with this one-sided response. And I told the unions, give me some information from my colleagues, and here it is, and I passed it out this evening. I would delay anything to do with the PLA to the next full meeting, and I'm not saying June 11th, because that's where we're gonna hold the budget, I believe. But on June 25th, I would like the PLA to come back in so this council can take a vote either up or down, and I will settle for whatever they decide, then and only then. Because I think, based on what we got from you, Madam Manager, is only one-sided. We didn't hear both sides. Please allow me to let my colleagues peruse this and digest it and decide for themselves what they feel is right. These are the people that know. Those are the people that have the contract. The workers will not, and that's all I have to say.
Councilor Sorrell? Councilor Sorrell?
Yes. I just had a quick question. Councilor Mercier had brought up the Beacon Hill Institute study quite often in her speech, and I don't see it being referenced here in your response. And I'm just wondering if it was the Beacon Hill Institute study, or was it project historical data that made you come up with that 10 to 15%? And also, I feel that the city manager is not going to be one-sided in her response. She's going to look at every which way. She spoke with all of our consultants, all of our experts, the MSBA, and she also considered our approvals of this project. And I don't feel that that is one-sided. I feel that that's a very rounded way of answering this response. Thank you.
Mr. Councilor Kennedy?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'd be interested in speaking on this issue, but you said there's 5 registered
Five
speakers.
registered
I'd prefer to hear from them first and then comment after that.
Madam Manager?
I didn't know if you wanted me to answer. I didn't know if the question was to me or to the consultant on the Beacon Hill Institute. Well, I can tell you based on my conversation with them, it was not based on the Beacon Hill Institute.
Well,
report.
I would have imagined that it would have been referenced here if it had come from the Beacon Hill Institute, your data.
The information, and Dale or Joe.
I would like for our experts to speak on this. Thank you.
With regard to the cost, we looked into the project with regard to our cost estimator, Peter Bradley, with PM&C. And Peter has done hundreds of projects with MSBA and has a very large database on school projects in Massachusetts. And he did not take into consideration a PLA when he estimated the project. We had a different estimate from Skanska, which Dale can speak to, but they were 2 independent cost estimates that were done and then reconciled, and the 2 estimators are very close in how they're seeing the project at this point. And that's how that 10 to 15% number was arrived at, was through the cost estimators.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay. All right, we have 5 speakers. Clerk, please.
David Richmond.
Just give your name, sir, and your residence.
My name is David Richmond. I live at 169 Fairmount Street in Lowell. Let me just get some time going here. All right, I wrote this down. I didn't have a lot of time, so hopefully it will make sense. I'm here now because I was here 2 weeks ago when I listened to my fellow members of the community speak in favor of unions and in favor of a PLA for the Lowell High School. I remember even some members of the city council spoke well of unions. Mayor Samaras, if I remember right, said he knew the value of a union wage that helped him pay for college. Too bad the human value of reciprocity has no currency. When we had our say, City Manager Donahue disappointed all the union members.
Excuse me, just one thing, let me say this. Last week we had a good meeting, I allowed many speakers, okay? But the thing is, we're not gonna make this personal, we're not gonna make this disrespectful. We're gonna state our opinions and be careful of how we state our opinions.
So you're gonna control my speech. You're not only gonna control how I make my living.
Don't raise your voice.
I'm just trying to be
No. You're in this chamber. You raise your voice, I'm going to ask you to leave. Otherwise, if you have something to contribute, contribute it. But you're not going to come in here to show disrespect to any member of this body or anybody here. That's all I'm asking for. I'm asking for someone to speak respectfully, and if you have something worthy of saying, state it. But if you're going to yell in this chamber and be out of control, I'm going to have you put out.
Only you have the right
Yes.
to yell and be out of control.
No, I have the right to control this meeting. So the debate is over. Are you going to speak respectfully, or am I going to ask you to leave?
When we had our say, City Manager Donahue disappointed all the union members by indicating that what the local workers wanted and thought was good for the community actually didn't matter, because the important decision, the real decision, the decision about the money, had already been made. Apparently, there is a schedule of values held by consultants and managers somewhere that says a union worker is worth so much and a non-union worker is worth a little less, and therefore you go with the worker who is worth less. Ever since President Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal, there have been consultants and managers going with the workers who are worth less. But the real question here is not about the money. If unions had greater membership, generally speaking, it would be politically untenable not to build the Lowell High School with union labor. The real question here is about citizenship status and who gets to decide what is built in our communities and how our communities are built. The real question here is about democracy in Lowell and in the United States, because this small matter here of who gets to decide what to do with public money, is being played out all over Massachusetts and all over the United States. There's a conservative group known as ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council. It's a right-wing organization intent on making sure that democracy is only practiced by the right people, maybe consultants and managers. Those are the ALEC, they're the people behind the right to work, the sort of right to work for less or the right to own your workers. That's a piece of legislation that they're trying to push through all the states. It's written by the American Legislative Exchange Council, says that workers can't be compelled to join unions, but more importantly, it criminalizes worker organization efforts. And this is what happened. I know that people spoke well of, and celebrated the National Grid ending of that strike, but the people coming up, they're being abandoned. They're not getting a pension. They're getting a measly 401k. So that's ALEC. And whatever you think, you guys are either wittingly or unwittingly responding to the agenda of ALEC. Like I said, if unions had a greater presence, this would be politically untenable. The MSBA, and I had no idea what it was, the Massachusetts School Building Authority, was established under the Republican governorship of Republican Mitt Romney. I remember watching, well, I'll leave it for others to pick up where I left off, but I'd love to see some democracy in Lowell.
Thank you. Next.
Joe Grenham.
Hello, I'm from Christian Hill. Madam Manager, your information is incorrect. They're full of baloney. Skanska, it's prevailing wage. The prices are the same. It's not driven. You guys know that. I did Gillette Stadium with your boss. It was on time and under budget. I did the Taunton Courthouse, the Worcester Courthouse. For crying out loud, your information is wrong. You're using a bad company, that Beacon Hill Institute. They're a right-wing group. There's people in Lowell that want to work there. Kids that go to school at the Voc, they go to Lowell High School. You're going to let people that don't live in this city work there? People that coming in, that you don't know where they come from? Pretty sad. I'm pretty sad. And I remind the council, the mayor, you agreed to a PLA when you interviewed in front of the Central Council, Central Labor Council. So did some of these other gentlemen and women here. You committed to it 2 years ago when you needed our votes. So stand up and do it.
Chris Brennan. Chris Brennan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Chris Brennan, President of Merrimack Valley Building Trades. I'm the gentleman, well, my team and Ray and the rest of the building trades are the ones who provided the information that we hope the councils will overlook. It's got upwards of a dozen different projects that were done, public projects that were done under a PLA, on time, under budget. My colleague Joe referenced a couple of them Taunton Courthouse, Worcester Courthouse, we've got the Whittier Bridge, we've got the Longfellow Bridge, and there's a slew of others that have come in on time, under budget. So I wanted to make sure that we provided this information to you guys and gals. It's really important. We did have a good meeting today with the team here. We talked about a lot of things. I fear that this PLA is in danger. I know that I'm not going to bore you with a lot of the stuff we talked about a couple of weeks ago, but you know, this agreement that we're trying to put together is 100% right for the citizens of Lowell, and more importantly for the city councilors of Lowell. If you're looking to get some kids to work, giving them long careers into apprenticeships, this is the way to go. You have the ability to mandate it through a PLA to get the right kids into these projects so that they're working long after this project is completed. And to answer the Councilor Cirillo's question, the Beacon Hill Institute was referenced on the handout that was given out 2 weeks ago at the previous meeting. So that's on that particular, I don't believe it was on tonight, but it was referenced a couple of weeks ago on that one. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jeff Thomas.
Hey, Jeff Thomas, 76 Bowling Street in Lowell. Also, potential candidate for the city council, just because I'm really sick of rhetoric around here. Number one, we're never going to get an REO around here. The solicitors 100% said it's not even constitutional for us to hire only city or part city or whatever it is. That's not right. It happens in numerous other cities in this state. The PLA, listen, professionally, I'm okay. Personally, let's do it. Let's spend the money. I'm a city resident. I've been here 43 years. You're telling me we can't afford $40 million? Why not? Why not? I'm a city resident. I'll pay that tab right now. It is what it is. We know it's not there. There's case study in the books you guys have that all these projects that have been under PLAs are 5, 6, 7% under budget, on time, under a PLA. I'm a local steward on a job in this city right now. And the superintendent of that job told me specifically today, was asking about the high school project. Has it been awarded yet? Nope, not that I've heard. I said, we're talking about a PLA. He said that would be the best thing to happen. He's been on 3 of them himself as a superintendent for one of the general contractors in the running for this company, or for this high school, I apologize. And he loves it. Said nothing, it ran smooth, everything was great. Why can't we do it? Who's Skanska to tell you? What about the taxpayers? Taxpayers paying for Skanska. Skanska's good with us too. It is what it is. But hey, money's money. We're spending a lot of money right now to deal with this. We've dealt with delays and delays and delays on whether it's going to Cawley or downtown or whatever, and everybody wants information and more information and more information and more information. We're giving you information. Delay it again. What's the big deal now? Let's keep delaying. Might as well. And then in another year or two, hey, we're at $500 million then. Let's go. There's not a problem with that, is there? Me as a taxpayer, I see a big problem with it because we've been asking for these things for a long time. But delay after delay after delay, Skanska's been hired what now? For 4 years, you say? So we've been at this for 4 years and we're still not even in the ground. Very, 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 very sad. Thank you.
Dennis Daly. Dennis Daly.
Good evening. I'm a Lowell resident, Dennis Daly. I live at 50 Corbett Street. I'm a local 12 member, and I'd like to say a proud member of a local community who are going to potentially put their own students into the schools here. And I think we'd really, as a union, represent ourselves well in what we would build for the city. Basically all I want to say. Thank you.
Councilor Kennedy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You might recall two weeks ago that I began my remarks by saying that I would not support anything that caused a delay or caused for the project to cost more money, or would require us to go back to the MSBA. I think that several members of the City Council have put in a considerable amount of time and effort, and I think a lot of people in this city have put in a lot of time and effort to get this project to where we are now. And it was delayed, and it has taken longer than it maybe should have taken, but that's because we had a full and complete dialogue on where the high school should go, which took a long time. One of the big issues, it seems to me, in the discussion that we've had over the past several weeks is the cost. And this project will be paying prevailing wage. And the consultants or the experts that we have indicate that that the cost, if we have a PLA, will be 10 to 20% higher. And the unions are saying, nope, it'll be exactly the same because we get paid prevailing wage. So through you, Mr. Mayor, could I just ask either someone from Skanska or Perkins Eastman, where is that 10 to 20? Where does that come in? If it doesn't come in wages, where does it come in, and why is it more expensive to have a PLA than not? Because that seems to be, more than anything else, at the crux of the issue.
Correct. So again, I'm Dale Calder with Skanska, and basically working through our cost estimator, unfortunately couldn't be here tonight, is that when you have a PLA, you have a limited bidding pool. However, and just so it's clear, if we don't have a PLA, union and open shops can bid on the project. Mm-hmm. So as everyone knows, the more people are bidding on a category, whatever subtrade it is, the more bidders, it will drive the number down. So that's where, our cost estimator, unfortunately, is not here tonight, but he's thinking 10 to 15%. And again, it will be something more, it could be something less. It's not an exact science.
All right. So if I understand you correctly, what you're saying is that the...
Excuse me. No comment. Let's show respect to each other. Just allow him to speak. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What you're saying is that the wages would be the same, whether it was a PLA or not, because everybody would be paid prevailing wage.
Correct. Yeah.
So the cost difference would come about because there would be less bidders.
And more competition without one.
Okay, and that's where that's where the whole increase comes from, that?
Yep.
Okay. So there is, union wages are equal to prevailing wage, right?
Yep.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. I guess that's a big part of it, but also too, in the PLA, there were a lot of features that I thought were good ideas, and I think that you've referenced some of those, Madam Manager, but if you maybe could expound on that a little bit, the issues of diversity and hiring local people and the apprenticeship program, how would that come about without a PLA? How would we ensure or provide the unions with assurance that we would have those kinds of policies?
That would be part of our contractual language from the CM on down through the filed subbids who would be subject to the CM language that we negotiate. So the city has the ability to provide for that through contractual language, local labor preference goals, diversity goals, apprenticeship programs, and also to be more specific about it. And I think, as I mentioned today when we met Chris and Ray and the consultants, I think part of the conversation and debate that has been, discussion or debate that's been going on is helpful. I think there's been some good points raised, obviously, that, in terms of having, as you put it, teeth in that language in terms of the contracts to make sure that we can hold, not just have it be a wishful thinking, we want to have local labor, or we want to have diversity, or we want to have apprenticeships, but really have some meaning to it and be able to enforce it. And our OPM would be also monitoring those goals through the contract prices. So that process, so that would include language with the CM contract, but also every other contract that would flow. Did I get that correct? Okay.
And we're committed to making sure that, that we do have an apprenticeship program and that we do have some
Absolutely.
diversity built in for.
And local labor preference.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how far can we go with local labor preference?
Well, I would turn that over. There is some case law, and that applies equally to us as well as to unions as far as hiring, but there's certainly model language that has been used in terms of local labor preference, and we would want it to be as strong as possible.
Okay. Can we hear from the solicitor on that as well? Just on local aid, you made a face when I asked about that, so could you just explain the?
We can have those preferences. However, when you're asking how far it can go, that would be sort of less certain. But all of the, even the companies that we're dealing with have programs, mentoringship programs, all the things that we're talking about here, efforts to boost the local economy by hiring local labor. What we can't have is what we had at one point in the city, which was an ordinance that required it. And that was struck down, as it was struck down in many other communities, requiring certain percentages of local labor. And it happened here in Lowell, it happened in Fall River, I believe, as well as a number of other communities.
And so the city had that at one point, and then the courts overturned that or struck that down so that we don't have it anymore.
Right.
So besides language saying we would prefer that you have Lowell people, is there, can there not be any percentage at all? I mean, how strong is that going to be?
I think that the industry standard, and in fact, the consultants might be able to speak to this a bit better based on their years of experience doing this sort of thing. But certainly, a lot of the firms that are presenting to the city, that is an important part of their presentation in terms of being able to have mentoringship programs and hire local labor.
Okay. Madam Manager, did you?
I was going to concur, and I don't know whether Dale or Joe have anything to add to that.
Yeah, can you add anything to that? In projects that you've had, has there been local preference, and how have they done that?
Well, like we said, we can build it into the contract with the CM down to the subcontractors. I don't have exactly what percent that is, but we can definitely find out what other cities that we're doing.
Okay. Have you done other projects where they've had that?
Yeah, oh yeah, we have.
Do you know what the percentage has been there?
I want to say in the 15% range. In that range? Yeah, it's roughly in that range. Okay. But I can get you the real information.
We can get that language for the council. I mean, obviously, we want it to be as robust and as I said, enforceable.
Right.
As well.
I understand it needs to be enforceable, but 15% doesn't sound very robust to me.
Well, we'll take a look at, I mean, and again, not my area of expertise, but even the union companies that bid, there can't be a guarantee that it's all local. There's no guarantee there either. But whatever language would apply equally to both union and non-union.
Okay, but we are committed to making sure that we are as strong as possible with local labor.
And diversity.
And the apprenticeship.
And apprenticeship.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And I think the apprenticeship point is something that we can add more specific language in. And as we said, we're happy to work with the unions over language that they think are good apprentice programs, and we can try and use that as part of our contractual negotiations as well.
So at this point, Madam Manager, you've had a couple of meetings, or maybe several meetings with the union.
We met a couple of weeks ago, and then we met today, whenever we could get everybody around the table.
Okay, and I was at the first meeting, but was not able to attend today's meeting. But is it the intention to continue to meet with the unions on this?
We talked about work going forward, where we're at. Obviously, nobody wants to go back to the MSBA, and I'll say that was discussed. No one wants to have to redesign this project. No one wants to have to add to the budget to this project. And no one wants this project delayed because of litigation. And the real problem there is everybody loses. The city of Lowell loses, the kids lose, the unions lose because there's no project going forward in the non-union. I mean, that's just not something that is in anyone's best interest. But what we talked about is in Skanska, the project manager specifically talked about working with the unions to not only make sure that their members are notified about the bidding and when, and even some of their members who may not be DCAM certified, get certified in time to be part of the bidding. If there are concerns about companies, Skanska was very willing to hear from the unions about that. If there were non-union companies that they felt were not playing fair or that there were other concerns. So what we were trying to do, and I think everybody in good faith, is establish some dialogue so that this project is the best for the city and it's best to get people working. And I think that's a win-win for everybody around the table. I mean, we talked about the fact that the 5 construction management firms that have been interviewed, every one of them are signatories with carpenters and laborers. And the estimate was that's about 45 to 50% of the project already that is guaranteed union. And then the other balance is what we're talking about, competitive bidding, but you know, it's something that it should be in order to avoid, and again, the letters that were included were letters that were sent to City Hall for city councilors, and we were asked to distribute. But you know, the suggestion that there'll be litigation because we're not doing open and fair bidding process under the state statute was very clear in those letters. And so, you know, I think it's a win-win for everybody to make it open and fair for everybody, but work together. And as I said, I think part of the discussions that have been ongoing have been helpful to kind of inform, you know, those areas that we can work together and looking to language moving forward.
Thank you. I think this is a very expensive project. And even though we're getting $216 million from the MSBA, and so the MSBA is very important to us, and it's a great opportunity for the city to have, because we wouldn't have the wherewithal to build this high school without the MSBA support. However, the city share also is very expensive, and I think everybody in the city that's aware of this project feels that this is very expensive, you know, and puts us to the, not to the brink, but puts us really up there in terms of bandwidth, in terms of financing. And so, you know, when you just say, well, what's another 40 million? We don't have another 40 million. We don't have another 4 million, for that matter, for this project. But I do think that when people are considering how much this project is going to cost the city, you feel better about it if you think that much of the money is going to stay in the local economy, and that happens by having as much local labor as possible. Thank you.
City Solicitor, you're all set. Mr. Noon, Councilor Noon, then
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Madam Manager, for the report. I'm glad that you have those language there. The local labor preference and the diversity. Question around how do we enforce the contractual language with the, you know, the people that we chose to do the work?
So that was a part of our discussion today as well. Skanska, the OPM, Dale, I don't know if you want to address this, but Skanska monitors the project every single day when it's underway. We'll be going through the project, looking at a number of things. We talked about certified payroll records, but how they can also deal with some of those issues, as well as those obligations in terms of local labor and diversity. So Dale, if you want to speak to that.
Yep, sure. I'm sorry. So every day we do a head count by what trades are on site. So as you heard from the manager, We will document exactly who's on the job site every day, and if there's goals that are not being met, we'll bring it to the CM's attention and, fix it. So, again, we'll have somebody on site full-time as part of our requirements to have somebody here, plus, the project team.
Thank you. The other part is the apprenticeship, and I know that a lot of people talk about it. And without the PLA, you still can have the apprenticeship with, say, UTech, Vogue, and so on. Is that correct?
Yeah, we talked about, so the apprenticeship is a little bit different in that, that is strictly based on the contractual language that we're going to build into that. Again, in our discussion, an example was brought up of an inferior apprentice program in another city at one point. And so we need to have specific language. What will it be? I believe each construction manager talked about apprenticeship programs, but we need to get specific about what that's going to be. So that's all part of the negotiation that will be going on, but it's uppermost of the goals that we are looking at in the contract, as well as cost. We're looking at these other important elements.
I know that last week you have been interviewing candidate for the contract manager. I believe it's 5 company. During those interview, I'm sure at some point you're going to really pick one out of those. You mentioned, am I correct that you mentioned some of these construction managers, CM, have already indicated that at least 45% of their workforce will be union?
Yes, because they are signatories with 2 of the major, when I say major, in terms of this project, both carpenters and laborers. So those are union out of the box, correct?
That said...
and all 5 are signatories with carpenters and laborers.
That said, the remainder, the bid for job is open to union and non-union as well. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Madam Manager.
Councilman
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Madam Manager, for the report. Just to get a motion on the floor, and then I'd like to speak on it. I'd like to move that we accept both recommendations from the city manager contained in the Lowell High School project PLA report. And again, the first one is to not conduct the study based upon the information contained in the report. And the other, which is more difficult for people to hear, is to not enter into a PLA. So I'd like to put that on the floor in the form of a motion to accept both recommendations.
I'll second it.
Second by Councilor Cirillo.
Thank you. And what I'd like to say is that I think that we have, and again, this is just my opinion, and I may have been the one of the ones that Mr. Grenham talked about, when we met with them a couple of years ago, but who said, oh yes, I'd be interested or support a PLA, but until you actually see the facts and our consultants that have put this information before us, it would be very difficult for me to support a PLA based upon information that we've heard 2 weeks ago and again this evening. I am encouraged, though, that meetings are continuing to take place with the city, with our consultants, and with the unions. I guess my question would be, once we award the contract with the construction management company, can those discussions continue with another party involved and have that company at the table to meet with Chris Brennan and his people and so forth to make sure that as we go forward and looking at local labor and looking at diversity, looking at safety, again, paramount, and certainly apprenticeship programs, can they continue to have a say in those discussions at that level? I mean, again, we would already have the construction management company in place, and you're promising to us and to the general public that you're going to endeavor to put language in there that will meet the goals that a typical PLA would without limiting the competition, I guess is the point that Councilor Kennedy made earlier and the consultants made, that the reason it's going to cost more is because we're have the potential to limit the competition. So I guess my thought going forward, and again, we'll be talking about this for many months, as the project continues to. And again, you're correct, Madam Manager. Nobody wants to go back to the MSBA. Nobody wants to redo the budget. No one wants to do that. So my question is, can you have the Chris Brennans and the Joe Grenhams and others sitting with our CM,
Well, I don't know about the CM, we'd have to
Okay.
look at the contract, but certainly our OPM. Our
Okay.
OPM is the check on the ground for the city.
Okay.
Our OPM is going to be monitoring every aspect of this project.
Okay.
So the goals of the contract, I mean, we certainly have an ability, and I just don't know because we haven't negotiated a
Right.
contract
Right.
yet. So I don't want to say anything that commits, but I can tell you that the OPM, and that was the conversation that we had today, and that it's important that there be continued dialogue, and not just waiting until someone's been awarded a contract. Here's what was pointed out today. If we wait till someone's awarded a contract and then they're not doing a good job or they're not a reputable company, and then coming forward, the OPM offered and said, come to us early, if there's somebody, and so there are a lot of suggestions and I think good conversation, around this issue.
Okay. I guess just one closing question. Can there be built into the contract penalties that if certain numbers are not met or certain programs are not started, are there penalties that?
Yes, and we'll have to get into that when we get to the stage of negotiating. But yes, without consequence,
Right.
then, it really, some of these provisions could be meaningless, and that includes on a number of aspects, so.
All right, thank you, Mayor.
Councilman Preston?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With a PLA in place, this council could have said, I want 50% Lowellians, I want 15% veterans, I want 20% of diversity, and so forth. Is this going to take place if there's no PLA in place? Is there going to be a percentage of how many Lowellians?
Yeah, Councilor, what we would negotiate is local labor preference. And I could stand corrected, but I'm not certain what you're suggesting that we could mandate that. I don't think we can in terms of whether it's a union or non-union.
In a PLA, you can mandate it. You can mandate it in a PLA.
Well, we will.
But you can't mandate it, you're telling me, on anything else. So if this council, and it would be up to this council, it would be up to us. If there was a PLA in place, it wouldn't be the city manager, it would be the bosses of the city manager that would do that. It would be us, the city council, that supposedly run the city. So I don't know who's going to choose who gets hired for diversity or whatever. Whose job or obligation will that be to make sure that so much goes to diversity, etc.? Who is going to do that?
So the construction manager that will run this project, that's our construction manager. Our project manager is Skanska, and they will work together, but Skanska will be checking on the construction manager, as well as there's a project manager from the MSBA that will be on this project.
See, I've been around a long time. I'm like one of the oldest people here, and I do know about unions, and I do know that companies that are non-union that hire, let's say they're mandated to hire these carpenters and laborers, they can say to them on paper, we're going to give you the prevailing wage. But in the back door, you got to give us, who checks that when the people are afraid to lose their job? And it's been happening, please don't tell me it hasn't. I've been through this as a union person myself, so I'm only trying to protect people's interests.
And that's our interest too. We don't want anybody, we don't want an unscrupulous company of any sort working on the project. We don't want any worker being taken advantage of. And we did discuss that as well today in preventative measures. And there's a number of steps, and without getting into detail, the pre-qualification is a very important step for any company, union or non-union, that have to be pre-qualified by our project manager. The DCAM certification is another one.
Can we have a roll call on that motion too that Councilor Milonazo said?
I'd like to finish Councilor Conway and Councilor Cirillo. Councilor Conway.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Madam Manager, I thank you for the report, and when we take a look at the information that's come forward, it's rather troubling when we talk about the potential of 30 to 40 million additional dollars. I certainly agree with many of my colleagues that we do want diversity, there's no doubt about it. We also want, which I think is extremely important, to hire as many Lowellians as we possibly can, and encourage the local workers. I think the apprentice program, I think, is excellent. The other thing that I think is extremely important is the safety in the project too, and I don't think that's necessarily been brought up, but I think that's extremely important. There are many people, and I think it was Senator Kennedy mentioned about the fact that there were many people have been working on this project in so many different ways. And I also would echo the fact that I would not want to go back to the MSBA either. And I also want to say that any additional monies, we're already going to the taxpayers with a tremendous amount of money. I would not want to add any more money to that, to the project. I certainly would not want to alter the project. In other words, to take something away from it, taking something away from the students. And I certainly would not want any kind of a delay in this project. It's going to take long enough, the way it's set up at this point. The question I have, and I wonder if we can elaborate a little bit more on this, what I'm concerned with is when we talk about the potential of an agreement, it sounds good, but what I'm worried about is the checks and balance that will ensure the contract is adhered to. Can somebody speak on that a little bit further, a little bit more elaboration on it? Because again, you could say this, and all of a sudden they're not adhering to it, and then all of a sudden it's a lot of red tape to try to fix the problem, and before you know it, things could get worse. So how do we ensure? How do we actually ensure? And these gentlemen here, I'm sure, have been through this project many, many, many times. So I would think that they would be able to come up with the checks and balances that take place and how to ensure that the agreement is adhered to, and what are the penalties, the specific penalties, if it is not? How is it fixed?
So Joe or Dale or Jim?
Oh, yeah, thanks. So the worker diversity is reviewed weekly at the job site meeting. That's the meeting that the architect, the contractor, the OPM, the owner all attend. So that's reviewed on a weekly basis, and the contractors are presenting information as to what that is for the requirements that the city sets. And whether that's local and diversity as well. In terms of how that gets reviewed, that's where that takes place. Then usually there are meetings that are established on a regular basis with the CM and the city to review that, and the consequences that have been discussed are talked about on a regular basis, whether that's a quarterly basis or whatever. So it's the expectation that the CM is enforcing that percentage requirement that's been established in the contract.
Would there be financial penalties if it was not adhered to? In other words, I can almost envision you sitting at the table and you said on a weekly basis, and all of a sudden you say, look, this is the fourth week in a row that we've talked about this, and you're still in violation. How is that handled? I mean, again, I would think there'd be some kind of a penalty more than just sitting down. I mean, if there was monies that were fines or whatever it may be.
There are, and that's yet to be determined. But the weekly meetings have been, on other projects, have been very informative because the contract goes through ebbs and flows. And you'll see in some periods, sometimes early in the project, whether that's site, as an example, sometimes you're not getting all the participation that you anticipated, but there is information coming from the sub-consultants, or subcontractors rather, that in the next phase, they're expecting to meet it or exceed it. So when you look at the entire project, that's what the intention is when you look at the entire project, is to be able to meet those design I should say, goals for diversity and local hiring.
Okay, so in the contract, all this information should be firmed up then?
That's correct.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Councilor Cirillo?
Hi, yes, thank you. I would ask our consultants and experts, when you receive the requisitions to be paid, could you have the timesheets as backup to show and request the timesheets to verify that the prevailing wage is being paid? I think that would be important, because I know that when working on construction projects, we have requisitions that are sometimes that thick, because we go through and we make sure that the time cards match up with what we are paying out. So that's also that. And I also had a question. Construct Secure, have you heard of it? The pre-qualification process called Construct Secure? What it is it's, and if we could look into it, it's a pre-qualification process that each of the subcontractors and partners go through to verify their financials, their safety record, and their production on their projects. And it's a very in-depth and key process that I was thinking that we could have our subcontractors that are possibly being interviewed to go through the Construct Secure process. So if that's possible, if we could look into that, is that?
We can look into Construct Secure. I am familiar with the Mass State College Building Authority that has an
Yes.
online pre-qualification
That's correct.
software. I don't know if it's Construct Secure, but I am familiar with that software. And also on these certified payrolls, we can have lines where you input diversity, local participation. We can have that on every subcontractor's weekly certified payroll, and we have done that in the past.
That's fantastic, thank you.
Councilman Lazo?
Just one follow-up question, again, to kind of put some teeth in what Councilor Conway was talking about. Again, I'm not looking for an answer tonight, but can you actually put into the contract that if certain recommendations are not met within that contract, that we could certify, we could then get in touch with DCAM and they would actually be DCAM decertified during the process? They could be on site. Could that happen?
I believe actually that is along the lines of the penalties that
Okay.
are typically in there, but we will
Okay.
go back and confirm.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Councilor Kennedy, I lost control last 2 weeks ago. I'm not going to do it this week. I'm just going to follow our regulations. Councilor Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to follow up on what Councilor Milanazzo and Councilor Conway were saying, just as a practical matter. So let's say that there's a sub, and let's say the sub has 10 people that they've on site doing work, just to keep the math simple. And they're all white guys from Manchester, which means they don't fit into any other category. No diversity, no local labor or anything. You said you take that up quarterly? Is that how that happens? Is it on a practical basis, how is that dealt with? Is there somebody that's on the job, for instance, that goes around with the clipboard and sees who's working there, or just how does that happen?
Typically, it would go off of the certified payroll, which is to be submitted weekly to see who's complying, who's not complying, and we can address that with the construction manager and the subcontractor, depending on the contract language.
Wait, how are you going to know, just by looking at the payroll, whether or not you've got local people, and how are you going to know whether or not you've got any diversity in the, amongst those 10 people?
You have those categories as a box on the certified payroll to fill that in, and then we can go into the field and confirm it.
Okay. And so is it something that, if it came to your attention, that would just be taken up quarterly? I mean, what occurs to me is if it's taken up quarterly, then you're like 3 months in, all right? And so then after the 3 months, you'd end up talking to somebody and you'd say, okay, well, it might be another 3 months, and then they still don't comply. Now you're 6 months into the job, and for 6 months, they've been non-compliant along those lines. And then I suppose you take action that's a little more drastic, but you're 6 months along. Go ahead.
It doesn't necessarily have to be quarterly. I mean, we can make that a weekly item on the project meeting minutes if need be, and have the certified payroll reviewed. So
All right.
it's obviously a large priority, and we can make it that.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
I'd just like to have a clarification. I said quarterly, and what I meant by that was a follow-through. There were consequences to that, so that I agree with Jim, it would be a weekly discussion at the job site meeting to see where we stood, so we'd be tracking that on a weekly basis, and then have a quarterly meeting with the city and discuss, whether you're meeting these goals, you're not meeting these goals. That's how it's done on other city projects, and there's a lot of pressure placed on the contractor group to make sure that that's done.
Okay, thanks. I think from the discussion we've had this evening with the city council, you're probably aware that those items are important to members of the city council, and not something that we should just talk about this evening and then just ignore or just kind of become lax about as the project moves forward, because we're at 4 years, right, for this project once we get cooking. So, all right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Madam Manager.
So, Mr. Mayor, tonight we received a motion by Councilor Milanazzo, seconded as well by some other councilor. So, Councilor Cirillo, to accept the report as more or less fact from the city manager. So despite the fact that, and I asked for a roll call on it, so despite the fact that we have the union go out of their way to provide the other side and statistics and information to what a PLA would do, and all the backups of different job sites that they've been on and successfully completed the work on time, it means nothing. So we're going to vote, I guess, on something we only heard one side of. Well, I just wanted to clear the record on that. Thank you.
All right. We're talking about matters of opinion, too. But the thing is, I think everybody has to recognize that this high school is very important to me, a little different from everybody else, because this high school represents everything I ever dreamed of in high school for children and the children of the city of Lowell. It's just going to be a quality school. And the issue is regarding a PLA and what have you, like Councilman Milanazzo said, I mean, I support union issues and I support the unions. But I also asked to be mayor of this city so I could help shepherd this project through, because this project is very important to me. At the same time, as mayor, I have to protect the interests of the taxpayers. And, we all have a difference of opinion, but the past week we've been getting a lot of information, and I just want to state my feelings. Yes, I support the unions, and I would ask as the city manager, as Councilor Milanazzo so well stated out in Councilor Noon, that we must.
Goodbye, Joe. Goodbye, Joe.
That we must, do the best that we can.
Keep your mouth shut too, right? Everybody wants to keep their mouth shut. Why don't he keep his mouth shut too?
If there's another outburst, I'll clear this room.
Table the issue, roll call.
Okay, for the issue. And I have the right to say what I would say in my own feelings. But let's have a roll call.
Counsel Milonazo.
Yes.
Counsel Noon.
Yes.
Mayor Samaras.
Yes.
Counsel Cirillo.
Yes.
Counsel Conway.
Yes.
Counsel Elliott. Counsel Kennedy.
Yes.
Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
Counsel Mercier.
No.
Thank you. We now have to go to the 7 o'clock hearings. Okay, the first utility hearing, National Grid requests installation of South SO pole at 500 Wentworth Avenue. I'd like to open a hearing for those who want to speak in favor. Anyone who wants to speak in favor? In favor? Yes. Please give your name and...
Good evening, I'm Paul Pellegrini from National Grid. I'm an engineer, and I'm here to represent National Grid as far as our petition for these poles. If you want to go through each one, Mayor?
No, no, just the first one. Just the first one.
Okay. The first one was 500 Wentworth Avenue, and that is a pole that has to go in to serve a gas regulator that has gone awry, and we're installing a new one with the has a different power requirements. So we're putting a pole there with a siphon, electric, to go underground to the gas regulator. The next one was
Well, we're going to do them individually.
Okay.
Can we bundle them?
No.
No, we have to do them individually, so.
Okay.
All right, thank you for that report. You're all set on that part.
Okay. There's three of them.
Yes, I'll call you back for each one.
Huh?
I'll have to call you
He'll
back.
call
for
you
each
back.
Oh, back, okay.
one. All right, that portion is closed. Anyone who wants to speak in opposition? Opposition, opposition. That portion is closed. I need a motion to refer to the wire inspector for a report.
So moved.
Recommendation by Councilor
Second.
Kennedy, second by Councilor Noon. Thank you. Next, by National Grid, installation of pole on Woburn Street at the intersection of Easton Street. Open hearing. Those in favor? Sir.
Yes, I'm Paul Pellegrini from National Grid Engineering Department. This pole is being put on, let me get the sketch here.
Woburn Street.
Right, Woburn Street, 178 Woburn Street. And this pole is going to be a support to one of the other poles there, because it's such a heavy load as far as there's electric cables and Verizon cables, some toll cables. So the pole is taking quite a load.
All right, thank you. Okay. Anyone else want to speak in favor? That portion is closed. Anyone who wants to speak in opposition? Opposition? That portion is closed. I need a motion to refer to the wire inspector.
So moved. Second.
Thank you, by Councilor Kennedy, second by Councilor Noon. Next, we have National Grid require installation of a 2 to 3 inch underground electric conduit at 27 West Third Street. Open a hearing for those in favor. In favor?
This pole is required to serve an underground transformer pad to serve the new construction at 27 West 3rd Street, condominiums and parking garage.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else in favor? Favor. That portion is closed. Anyone who wants to speak in opposition? Opposition. That portion is closed. I need a motion to refer to the wire inspector for report and recommendation by Councilor Milonazo, second by Councilor Noon. The hearings are closed. Next, we, regarding the city manager's motion responses, I need a motion to accept the rest, place on file.
So moved.
By Councilor Noon, second by Councilor Cirillo. Thank you. Next, we have 5.2 budget presentation, Madam Manager.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to the council. Everybody should have on their desk this evening the budget for fiscal year 20. We're delivering that. The vote is to accept it as a timely delivery. We actually have a short PowerPoint prepared. So through you, Mr. Mayor, I would turn this over to the CFO to walk through some of the highlights of the budget. Obviously, it's a very lengthy document, but we did want to present an overview for you this evening. So with your permission, I'll turn it over to Connor Baldwin.
Thank you, Madam Manager. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the members of the City Council, as the manager stated before you, on your desk this evening, you have a copy of the fiscal year 2020 operating budget, as well as an update to the city's 5-year capital plan. So we're just going to walk through some of the challenges and initiatives for the next fiscal year. But first, we'd just like to talk a little bit about the schedule. The budget is something that comes to the City Council every year in the spring, but it's really a 365-day-a-year part of the City Manager's office. Before you tonight are a number of votes, the first of which is a vote to accept timely submission of the budget, to satisfy the City Manager's statutory responsibility to deliver a budget to the City Council. This and several other votes that are on the agenda tonight will be referred to public hearings on June the 11th, at which time the City Council will consider the appropriation order as well as the loan orders that are proposed to fund the this year's portion of the capital plan, as well as the next phase of the water and sewer utilities capital improvement plan. So some of the major challenges that the city faced this year are not unlike many challenges we faced in prior years. The first of which are fixed costs. One of those for fiscal 20, which continues to be a challenge, is the increase in the pension assessment. So for fiscal 20, right off the bat, the city faced a $1.7 million increase to the PERAC assessment over fiscal year 19, as well as almost $2 million in increased assessments on the cherry sheet. The most notable of which, and I'll talk a little bit more about this one in a minute, has to do with the charter school assessment. Some of the newer challenges this year are and this is something that the council has discussed at length in the past, has to do with the new trash contract. So this first year is not the real big hit to the city financially. However, there is approximately a $730,000 increase to the budget for waste collection. Now, that's a number to meet the budgeted amount. However, there is an opportunity based on the behavior of our residents to bring that number down based on the contamination of recycling. So those are the major challenges. There were other challenges, of course, in fixed costs such as debt service. So the city continues to pursue an aggressive capital plan in streets, infrastructure, public safety, community maintenance and development, and the debt service associated with those is beginning to come on the general fund budget. As well, in fiscal 20 this year, we saw a loss of some significant grants that had funded salary and wages, such as in the health department. There was a loss of a school nurse grant that had supported the salary and wages budget in the health department for a number of years, as well as grant funding that was lost in police and fire. This was grant funding that we knew would diminish over time, and the city accepted the responsibility to take on those costs on the general fund to maintain the level of public safety that the residents expect. So on the issue of charter schools, this graphic that's on the slide sort of highlights the increased gap between the assessment that Lowell receives on the cherry sheet and the reimbursement. So if you look back to fiscal year 2008, that differential was just under $8 million. And then for fiscal 19, now this was based on the 19, I think it was the House budget, was over $20 million. And if you compare that with the 4-year history and you look at the increase over the prior year, year over year, it's approximately in the $1.5 to $2 million net increase every year. So the net charter cost is what we consider the difference between the assessment and the reimbursement. That is now up in over $20 million. And for fiscal 20, and this is based on the Senate Ways and Means budget, that number for Lowell is $1.3 million. Despite these challenges, this budget that we present to you tonight still maintains funding for some of the strategic initiatives in the city manager's office in those key priority areas. The first of which is education. So the city manager has committed to meeting the council's desire to fully fund the city's net school spending requirement. At our last certification, we were over $8 million above the net school spending level. And next year, we're determined to do the same. So the city has increased the local cash match from the tax levy by the state's recommended municipal revenue growth factor, which equates to approximately $600,000 or $700,000. That is in addition to this 9.7, could be higher depending on the final numbers coming out of the State House, approximately $10 million in additional funding to the local school district. It also includes funding to support the Chief of Police strategic public safety strategy with the new Charlie sector in the downtown. That will include a new substation. The City Council approved the lease a few weeks ago to heighten the presence in the downtown for public safety. This budget and the capital budget also include a $25.2 million investment in capital projects, and between water and sewer, $112 million to fund phase 3 of the water and sewer utilities capital plan. So just to put the school funding in perspective, this chart that's on the screen here compares the gateway city communities in the Commonwealth and their relative fiscal year 2018 compliance with the net school spending requirement. Lowell is the orange bar there at just over $7 million, and you can see how Lowell stacks up against our peer communities, Haverhill, Brockton, Fitchburg, Fall River, some of which are at or slightly above the net school spending requirement, and others like New Bedford and Springfield, which are significantly lower than the net school spending requirement. The outlier here is Pittsfield, which is 15.3. They are our only other competition by this metric. So other highlights included in this budget are the strategic investment in the health department to bolster the efforts to combat the opioid crisis. So the syringe collection coordinator is funded in the fiscal year 2020 budget, as well as other new positions that have been added, like the substance abuse coordinator and support staff in the health department. There's also enhanced communication with the neighborhoods through the strategic realignment of positions in the city manager's office to better facilitate communication between City Hall and the neighborhood groups. And finally, through the city manager's office, planning and development, the task force, and a collaboration with the various nonprofits in the city, a continuation of the homelessness task force. New opportunities in fiscal 20 have the potential to dramatically improve the outcomes for individuals and families experiencing homelessness. So these final slides here, if I could get this to work, lay out the revenue in the city budget, and this is notable for a couple of reasons. The city of Lowell is different from its peers throughout the Commonwealth in the amount of funding from the tax levy that supports the operating budget. So if you look at this pie, the pie chart that's on the screen here, the intergovernmental revenue, which is money from the state, Chapter 70, unrestricted aid, makes up about 2/3 of the pie, whereas the taxes, or what you would consider the tax levy and other taxes like motor vehicle excise, are only about slightly over 1/3. And the total operating budget for fiscal 20, and this number includes all funds, general fund, water and sewer enterprise, as well as all the cherry sheet charges for fiscal 20, is $417.7 million. So just a little bit on taxes for the next year. the fiscal year 2019 tax levy was approximately $133.8 million. We're proposing for fiscal 20 a tax levy of $136.8 approximately million, and we're estimating about $1.5 million in new growth, which we feel is on the conservative side. However, we do expect some new projects to come in line, and we hope that that number will be greater even still. So this chart also compares us, the city's excess levy capacity, reserve position, as well as some other financial metrics to our median across the Commonwealth, and Lowell fares well. We've talked in the past a number of times about the significant amount of excess levy capacity that the city has, and that is the amount of money that the city taxes under the levy limit. That number we expect in fiscal 20 to be in the upwards of $19 million. And finally, these are the appropriations by category. So you can see that the largest portion of appropriations are for education. Now that includes the Lowell Public School District, as well as the Greater Lowell Vocational High School and the charter school assessment, and then sort of divvies out the rest of the pie across public safety, public works, general government, and then that debt service number, which includes the debt service on the general fund as well as for the various enterprise funds. So like I mentioned in the beginning, the budget appropriation order as well as the loan orders for for the capital plan for the general fund and for the enterprise funds will be referred to a public hearing for discussion and debate on June 11th. Thank you.
Any questions?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the presentation, Connor. My question is, have we received the school department budget as proposed yet? We have not. Okay. Okay. Just wondering if that was figured in here. Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
I'm sorry, Councilor Conway?
Yeah, thank you. Through you to Connor Baldwin. Thank you for the presentation, and a fantastic job. Obviously, a tremendous amount of work put into that. When you mentioned something about the grant funding, the loss of grant funding, could you elaborate a little bit on that? Is there a reason for this loss? And also, if there is there a trend that, that the cuts have been made or will be made going forward? And whether we have to make any kind of plan for it?
It is often the case, Councilor, that we get and lose grants year to year. And the city has a tremendous staff through the police department, planning and development, health and human services, of trying to, when grants are lost, find other grants to make up the difference. The reason that was a notable item in the budget presentation this year is that there were some rather significant losses this year, and it wasn't for any fault of the city's. The school nursing grant, which is a state grant, is no longer being offered in that particular area, and that went to support a significant amount of the staffing in the health department. The one in the police department that was the most notable was the staffing grant from the Executive Office of Public Safety, which historically has supported our dispatch operation in the communications center. Oftentimes decisions at the state level lead to realignment of these funding opportunities. So when that happens, we have to assume a portion of their salaries back onto the general fund. The last major one had to do with a federal grant that the city received years ago from FEMA, I believe it was, for firefighters, where we knew when we accepted the grant that it would fund 100% of the firefighter's salary the first year, a lesser portions in years 2 and 3, and then after that, the city would have to assume full responsibility for their salaries, and to accept the grant, you need to accept to keep them on and make the commitment to the grantor that the city will keep those on staff.
Is the grant normally, would it be a 3-year, or does it vary?
It really does vary, Counselor, from grant to grant. This was one specific to that Assistant for Firefighters grant, I believe it is, through the federal government.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Councilor Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Connor Baldwin, what do we receive from the lottery, reimbursement from the lottery?
So the state legislature rolled lottery, which used to be a separate funding source for cities and towns, into the unrestricted general governmental aid a few years back. And I do not have the number in front of me, and I hate to quote numbers that aren't in front of me, but I would hazard a guess that it's about $25 million, approximately.
So could you give us a report through a motion to get the accurate figure? And what do we use it for? What does this money go into? And do you know what the lottery generates through Lowellians that play the lottery? Because
Absolutely, we can produce a report, Counselor. I would refer the council to the financing plan that's in the budget document, which for each department lays out what funding source goes to fund each expense. This is something that the finance department has taken great care to do, so you can know, a person reading the document would know how many of their motor vehicle excise tax dollars are going to fund street paving or street lights, but we would be happy to get you a report on that.
Sure, thank you.
Madam Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to add, I want to thank Connor Baldwin for the tremendous amount of work that's gone into this year's budget and the preparation. I know we'll be taking this up at a public hearing on June 11th, but he has done this on his own without a deputy CFO since December and has not missed a beat. So I want to thank him and give him tremendous credit for an outstanding job.
Mr. Leahy, Councilor Leahy.
Thank you. Thank you for the budget, but through you to the manager, can I just ask, how are we doing with we have 2 contracts left to go, maybe, with the firefighters and
We have
police?
3.
3.
Ongoing negotiation.
How's that going?
Yep.
It's
Ongoing
going-
negotiation.
All right. And,
Yeah, we have 3 that are outstanding.
okay, all right, and.
We're always hopeful.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Councilor Noon.
I just want to thank Connor for giving us work to do. It's going to be a lot of reading, and I'm sure I'm going to have a lot of questions come, the public session. Thanks for the report.
Okay. Any further questions? I need a motion to to accept and place in file. Councilor Milonazo, second by Councilor Mercia. Next, we have communication from the city manager, requests out-of-state travel for DPD. I need a motion to adopt.
Motion to adopt.
Second by Councilor Conway. Roll call.
Councilor Milonazo.
Yes.
Councilor Noon.
Yes.
Mayor Samaras.
Yes.
Councilor Cirillo.
Yes.
Councilor Conway.
Yes.
Councilor Elliott. Councilor Kennedy.
Yes.
Councilor Leahy.
Yes.
Councilor Mercia.
Yes.
8 yeas.
Next, votes from the city manager. Vote to accept timely receipt of the budget fiscal 2020, waive the full reading and second reading by title. Pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 44/32, the City Council of the City of Lowell acknowledges timely receipt from the city manager on May 28, 2019 of the recommended budget for the City of Lowell for fiscal year 2020, with the understanding that any recommended revisions as may be submitted by the city manager at a later date prior to the date of final approval of said budget by the City Council shall be collectively considered the proposed budget for fiscal year 2020 for the City of Lowell. A public hearing on the budget shall be advertised in the Sun on May 31st, 2019, to be held on Tuesday, June 11th, 2019, at 7 p.m. in the City Council chambers on such other dates and times as necessary and may be publicly announced by the City Council. I need a motion to adopt by Councilor Conway, second by Councilor Cirillo. Roll call.
Councilor Milonazo.
Yes.
Councilor Noon.
Yes.
Mayor Samaras.
Yes.
Councilor Cirillo.
Yes.
Councilor Conway.
Yes.
Councilor Elliott. Councilor Kennedy.
Yes.
Councilor Leahy.
Yes.
Councilor Mercia.
Yes.
8 yeas.
Next, the vote to authorize fiscal 20 budget appropriation. Motion referred to a public hearing on June 11, 2019 at 7 p.m. Need
So
a-
moved.
By Councilor Kennedy, Councilor Conway, second by Councilor Cirillo. All set. Next, vote endorse fiscal 20 to 24 capital plan, waive the full reading, second reading by title.
We're going to continue
Oh,
this to June
that's a
11th.
continue to June 11th. Next, 6.4, vote authorize manager to execute annual action plan of fiscal 2019 to 2020, waive the full reading, second reading by title, authorize the approval and submission of the federal fiscal year 2019-2020 City of Lowell annual action plan to the Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD. I need a motion to adopt.
So
By Councilor Milonazo, second by Councilor Noon. Roll call.
Council Milonazo.
Yes.
Council Noon.
Yes.
Mayor Samaras.
Yes.
Council Cirillo.
Yes.
Council Conway.
Yes.
Council Elliott. Council Kennedy.
Yes.
Council Leahy.
Yes.
Council Mercia. 8
Yes.
yeas.
Okay, next, vote license agreement, ZDS Holding and LLC sidewalk seating, waive the full reading, second reading by title. And authorizing the city manager to execute a license agreement between the City of Lowell, City and ZDS Holding LLC DBA Little Delight for the use of a portion of city property adjacent to the premise at 132 Merrimack Street, Lowell, for the purpose of sidewalk seating. I need a motion to adopt.
Motion to adopt.
By Council Cirillo, second by Council Milonazo. Roll call.
Council Milonazo.
Yes.
Council Noon.
Yes.
Mayor Samaras.
Yes.
Council Cirillo.
Yes.
Council Conway.
Yes.
Council Elliott. Council Kennedy.
Yes.
Council Leahy.
Yes.
Council Mercia.
Yes.
Did you want to speak on this?
8 yeas.
I just was here for any questions you guys had, because I'm the owner.
Okay. Everybody set? Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you
thanks,
very
guys.
much. All right, we've covered that. Now we have orders from the city manager, loan order, fiscal 2020 capital improvement. Motion to refer to a public hearing on June 11th, 2019 at 7 p.m.
So moved.
Motion by Conway, second by Councilor Kennedy. Next, we have loan order, water enterprise capital improvement of $45 million. Motion to refer to public hearing on June 11th, 2019 at 7 p.m.
So moved.
By
Seconded.
Councilor Noon, second by Councilor Cirillo. Next, loan order, wastewater capital improvement, $67 million. Motion to refer to a public hearing on June 11th, 2019 at 7 p.m.
So moved.
Councilor
Seconded.
Noon, second by Councilor Cirillo. Next, we have ordinances from the city manager. Ordinance amend 28-42 Lowell Police Department Training Act account revolving fund. Need a motion to refer to a public hearing on June 11th, 2019,
So moved.
7 p.m. by Councilor Noon.
Seconded.
Second by Councilor Cirillo. Now we have a report of subcommittees. The Housing Subcommittee of May 28, 2019.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're going to have to reschedule. Actually, we will be rescheduling that meeting. Again, unforeseen circumstances came up with both members, so we did not have a quorum. So I'd like to try to do it on June 11th at probably at 5 o'clock if we could, unless other people have that already taken. I just defer to the clerk.
Yeah, I think that June 11th, that's the date of all the budget openings and budget hearings and stuff,
Okay.
so it's,
Okay.
I
All
think
right.
5 o'clock is available, but
Well,
I think,
I'll reach out to Council
We'll-
Mercier and
we'll-
Council
yeah.
Elliott and try and reschedule it.
all right.
Thank you.
Okay. Then we have the Technology Utilities Subcommittee of May 28th.
Yep, thank you. Myself, Councilor Cirillo, Councilor Noon, we're all present for the subcommittee meeting. Also in attendance, Councilor Milonazo, Councilor Mercia. We have Moran Fernandez from the IT, Connor Baldwin from the manager's office, and Craig Thomas. We had a presentation from Sci-Fi Networks from Scott Bradshaw. He's the president. So he gave us an outline of what his company can do and what they do when they come into cities and towns. So there was a lot of information, and his presentation was good. I guess the gist of it was that what he's gonna bring us is choice, competition, and customer service. They say that they can come into the city and run fiber in approximately 2 years, which would allow the capacity for every home and business in the city to have fiber, which eventually will, just give us more choice, more competition, and we're basically planning for the future. So there was a motion made by Council Cirillo, seconded by Council Noon, to ask the manager and ask the council to have the manager go into negotiations for a contract. I don't know if anybody else has anything to add. Council Noon, Council Cirillo. So it was a good presentation. We're gonna lay out fiber optics for the future. You know, everything's changing so fast. So I think it looks like it's gonna be a good deal for the city. Thank you.
Okay. So I need a motion to accept this report of progress
So moved.
by Council Cirillo, second by Council Milonato.
Yes, I just have a quick question. Is it possible for those of us that did not get a copy of the presentation to get a copy of the presentation either from the manager's office or from Connor Baldwin?
Yeah,
Thank
we
you.
will get you a copy.
Thank you.
All set. Okay. Next on petitions, we have a speaker. This is Heather McDonald. McDonald requests permission to address council regarding parking on Park Street.
Hi, my name's Heather McDonald. I'm a property owner at 4 Park Street in Lowell. We've owned the building for 13 years and always had a great parking history. We only have on-street parking. And about a month ago, 2 signs went up across the street that are, say, tow zone, no parking. And I see it is creating a problem, but also in the winter. And there are new condos that have gone in across the street that have some parking, but we're nervous that the parking is going to get harder in the winter. And I've already had tenants complain that they don't have enough parking, or they're coming home late at night and having to walk a couple blocks to get home. I wasn't notified when those signs went up, so I wasn't sure if I missed a posting of some kind, or if the city has the right to put up signs where they see fit. But I was wondering if there's a way to get more information about it and then find out if there's a compromise we can come to for parking. We currently have about 12 to 13 cars that come out of our building, but it's always been easy and great up till now.
Any questions? Councilman Mercia?
Did this have anything to do with the work construction that's been going on there near Chestnut Street and East Merrimack, Nesmith, and that area there?
I'm not sure. We'll get a report. I mean, there has been, National Grid's been out there working in preparation for the Route 38 expansion, but there are also new condominiums, and so I'm not sure. We will get a report, and Alex will get your contact information as well, ma'am, so that we can have the traffic engineer, and we'll have a meeting with you to find out what's going on.
All right, that'd be great.
Okay. I need a motion to refer to the traffic engineer for a report and
So
recommendation.
moved.
By Councilor Cirillo, second by Councilor Mercia. Okay. Next, National Grid reconstruction of a gas pressure regulator station with associated piping installation of update safety measures at Moulton Square. I need a motion to refer to a public hearing on June 25th, 2019.
So moved.
By Councilor Noon, second by Councilor Conway. Wave Guide requests installation of 450 feet of underground and below bridge conduit at Pawtucket Street Bridge over Northern Canal Tiger Bridge project. Need a motion to refer to a public hearing on June 25th, 2019 at 7 p.m.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Councilor Noon, second by Councilor Cirillo. Next, Councilor motion, Councilor Elliott requests city manager look at the traffic calming measures in Stackpole Street, including possible no-through traffic signs.
Second.
Second by Councilor Noon. Yes, Councilor Conway.
Yeah, thank you. Councilor Elliott asked me to speak on this motion. He had individuals in that area and on Stackpole Street talk to him about the problem that they're encountering. You actually have a cut-through from Rivercliff down to Barrisford, and then at that particular point, they go on to East Merrimack Street, and then from East Merrimack Street onto Stackpole Street. And there are a lot of children in that area, and what has been reported back is the cars go at a tremendous speed, and there's naturally a real concern. So Councilor Elliott was wondering if the traffic engineer could take a look at that and have some kind of signage that's going to slow that situation down and make things a little bit safer in that area.
All set. Next, we have announcements. Councilor Conway.
Yeah, thank you. I have some real nice positive announcements here, Mr. Mayor. I think a special congratulations to some sports teams at Lowell High School and their coaches. The Lowell High School girls softball team, their record is 19 wins and no losses, and they are the Division I champs, and the Boston Globe and the Herald actually ranked them as #1, so congratulations to them. Girls lacrosse had 15 wins and 3 losses, and they are also the Division I champs. And this would be no surprise to us here. The boys field and track are the MIAA Division champs East, and this Saturday at 3 o'clock at Westfield State, they'll be competing in the All-States tournament. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any other announcements? I need a motion to adjourn. Councilor Kennedy, second by Councilor Cirillo. Thank you.